All right, rock and roll. Welcome one, welcome all to the Scorched Earth Political Podcast. I am your host, John. And, you know, the like and subscribe thing, it really doesn't really seem to have, I don't have my heart in it today. Comments, please feel free to. It's such a somber day. It's such a disappointing day in what our democracy has become. But I'm going to try and start it out with a little levity today. Um, have you ever had somebody who comes into your life and they are just way cool, way bloody cool? I used to work at this job at Kaiser, and there was this gentleman. I would interact with him occasionally. His name was Austin. He was just a smart dude. He had it all together. He had a great family. He doted on his wife. He loved his kids. I mean, this guy had it all together, right? Everything. And I was like, just talking to him, I felt like my cool quotient went up, right? One of those people. And, I was like, wow, what's the character flaw in this? Of course, eventually I found out he was a Lakers fan, probably being Los Angeles, that's part of the DNA here, but that became his fatal flaw. Of course, that's because I'm a Celtics fan. Hello, all-time leader in world championships. Throw it. But a couple months ago, it was happy holidays. Austin is always so nice. Wished me a happy holiday. I texted him back. I haven't worked at that facility in quite a while, and he was one of the real. I really enjoyed his company. I always enjoyed his friendship. Even though we were quote unquote work friends, he always seemed to be sincere. He always seemed to be contrite. He was just one of those genuine people. And we started, exchanging some text, and he talked about the podcast, and or I did. He was asking if I do stand-up comedy. I used to do it. I don't do it as much because I devote my time to the podcast. And he says, well, send me the podcast. I said, okay. It's kind of a risky thing. Let's be honest. If you're not at least moderate to Democrat to progressive, whatever moniker, whatever label you want to put on it, if you're conservative, if you're right of center, it's probably not your thing. There's a couple MAGAs who like to troll me, but I think they just do it because they were deprived kids at Christmas when they were growing up. But I sent it to him. I said, look, you don't have to say anything. You be cool, whatever. And I didn't hear anything from him for a couple weeks. And I was like, oh, man. Because his opinion doesn't matter. You don't want to tell him that. But I was like, oh, man, his pattern, and then he was kind enough. He reached out this weekend, and I didn't do the podcast on Saturday because I was sick. I had a head cold. My voice was even more wretched and terrible than it is now. And he said, hey, I like the podcast. And I really meant a lot to me. I appreciate it. When I do get positive feedback, I don't live on the positive feedback, but it's some validation. It does mean something. And then he threw in a little snippet. He said his lovely wife noticed we were at 666 subscribers. So she hit subscribe just so I wouldn't be the number of the beast, the number of the devil. Now, look, for a lot of people who do listen to me, they do think I am the devil. People I've went out with, people I've had friendships with, people especially I've had enemies, people especially I've worked with. They will say, John is El Diablo. I used to have a guy who used to call me El Diablo literally each and every day. I want to say thank you to Austin. I want to say thank you for and his beautiful wife for throwing us over the hump. We are free and clear. And look, I know we only got 667 subscribers, but Joe Rogan was there one time. We're just about 5 million behind him. Okay, we're still coming. And also, as you noticed, I got a wristband. Yeah, I'm more than just a good-looking dude. I'm out there. Now, you're saying to yourself, gee, John, going to the clubs? Of course I could, but I don't. Because that's something that the cool people like Austin and his wife do. But no, I live in Los Angeles, some of the best clubs in the world. I frequent Vegas, some of the best clubs in the world, Hakkasan, One Oak, Hyde, Jet, places like that. And no, on Saturday night in one of the best cities in the world, I go do backyard wrestling in Orange County. And I will say this, I had so much fun. There is pro wrestling. There's the AAA, the AA. We were probably at high school level. We were down there. But the enthusiasm, Brian, I do a sports show with. We're going to be bringing that back here pretty soon. And his son was the announcer, and he was spectacular. This wrestling was so down to earth. Literally, the announcer was having a drink in the ring as he was announcing the contestants, the combatants in wrestling. And they, wrestling, they pull fake punches, whatever. But I'll tell you this, we heard some real slaps, and we heard some real thuds, and we heard some real pain. It was spectacular. I had a great time with Brian, his son, his other son, and we talked Red Sox, and it was a great day. But you know what? Let's talk about what's really going on in the world. And it was a somber day in Minnesota. Let's get to it. Let's burn it all to the effing ground. And I want to start out with something. You know what? We're gonna circle around to it. I want to talk about Alex Honnold, truly one of the people I admire the most in this world, but literally in the quest, in the lust for people to watch your events, do we really have to put somebody on the death list? Are we just sitting there anticipating? It's like the Running Man. That's what I'm going to call it at the end of this segment. Please stay tuned. But let's talk about what went on in Minnesota today. The ICE, the federal agents, executed the second American in 3 weeks in Minnesota. I called the first one Renee Nicole Good. I called it a murder, and it absolutely was. This was a murder. I call this more of an execution. It was literally 6 against 1, 7 against 1. They disarmed him, and they literally shot him to death. It was literally the firing squad in Minnesota on the snow. And as a liberal, I'll speak just for myself, I'm getting really effing tired of we have to dot the I's and cross the T's on everything we say. It has to be correct. We got to run it through the lawyers. We got to see what the legal counsel says. F you. We have a situation where on one side of the spectrum, these Democrats, and I understand why the Republicans gain power, because the Democrats are nothing but a bunch of pussies. Straight up. Get behind me. I'll lead you to safety, okay? I see all these podcasts and everybody is saying, well, the killing. It's blatant effing murder. And it is amazing, and maybe it's just me in my ecosystem, but I'm watching The Bulwark, I'm watching Rick Wilson, I'm watching Scott Stevens, and excuse me, and other notable Republicans who are now against the party. And they're sitting here decrying, how did we get to this place where we have mass thugs in the streets picking on, detaining, arresting, incarcerating, and now killing and executing American citizens? Let's get back to the start. It's like the Coldplay song. Let's go back to the start. Let's start with the Patriot Act that you mother effing Republicans passed after 9/11. Oh, we've got to restrict your freedoms. We've got to be able to rein in things because of terrorism. I do hold the Trump administration accountable, but I start with all you son of a bitches. The Tim Millers and the Rick Wilsons and all you people who thought in 2002 it was going to be a real good idea to let the government just go to some judge in some basement and say, we need wiretaps on 15 million Verizon customers. And then they got to the point they were so effing lazy, they couldn't even do that. They just started doing it anyway because there was no repercussions. There was no feedback. There was no consequences. Now we morph into a situation where they don't even care. Literally minutes after this innocent American was killed, the administration is putting out literally propaganda that the old Soviet Union would look at and go, oh man, that's some slanted stuff. That is some slanted stuff. Now, I want you to be very kind to me. Okay? We all know I'm the vision of loveliness, but I am not that technically adept. I'm having a glitch in my iPad, so what I am going to do is I am going to show you the video on my phone, on the iPad. Please bear with me. We're not cutting in like I'm CNN, okay? Throw me a little love. I just got off being the devil, okay? Let's go.
Here's what we know so far about the man who was shot and killed by Border Patrol in Minneapolis. The man has been identified as 37-year-old ICU nurse and U.S. citizen Alex Pretti. DHS says that Pretti approached agents with a handgun, violently resisted attempts to
What they
disarm
said.
them, prompting an agent to fire defensive shots. A CNN analysis of videos appears to show a federal officer took the gun from Pretti
Sure does.
seconds before another officer fired.
Take the gun, now shoot him in the head.
Minnesota with a permit. A bystander video obtained by the Associated Press shows the federal agent shot Pretti moments after he appeared to be filming them and was pushed back by agents. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz called the DHS recounts as nonsense and lies, saying he has seen the video from several angles and it's sickening. As Homeland Security continues to investigate the shooting, the Minnesota National Guard is bringing in resources as anti-ICE protests continue.
Let's start with Tim Walz. I appreciate the man. He's a serious politician. Words have consequences, but not in today's political environment. Tim Walz needs to come out like the mayor, Jacob Fry, of Minneapolis, and go, they effing murdered Alex Pretti. It was a somber day, less than 3 weeks after Renee Nicole Good. As you can see from the video, it is disturbing. And basically, 6 masked agents. First of all, Alex was in the street directing traffic. He had his cell phone in his right hand. Now, unbeknownst to the agents, he did have a weapon. He did have a permit to have the firearm lawfully, and also another permit for a concealed carry. It was underneath his jacket. The officers were unaware of that at the moment. 6 of them surrounded him. Basically, what happened is they pushed that lady into the snow. We do not know her name at this moment. And he went over to save her. His last act on this earth was one of valor and honor, to protect the integrity and the life of that lady. Bless you, Alex. He was an ICU nurse, 37, who worked at the VA. He went over to help. Immediately, one of the ICE agents pepper sprayed them both in the face. And I will tell you this, I have dealt with pepper spray before at a protest, and also we've talked about it in the podcast at a hotel after the police used pepper spray. Let me tell you something. Pepper spray is no joke. Forget all these other comments. I've dealt with it twice in my life. And it is paralyzing, blinding, and debilitating on every level. You are not doing an effing thing. Take it from me. It is insane how effective that is. I will tell you this. It is more effective than shooting somebody. Yeah, if you shoot somebody in the head or you shoot them in the heart, they're dead immediately. I get that. But outside of that, if you shoot them, let's say in the leg or in the torso, something like that, where it is not a life-threatening wound immediately, pepper spray is literally 5 times more effective. You remember back in the day, they used to have those taser guns? Pepper spray is so much more effective than a taser gun, which had 10,000 volts. I was at a party once where somebody got hit by a taser, and they got hit, and they were literally kind of semi-lucid for about 30 or 40. You get hit with pepper spray, you are immediately done. Game over. So they're both pepper sprayed. They are both debilitated. They are both on the ground. And then one of the ICE agents starts pistol whipping Alex. You could see from the video. And then as CNN showed on the slow-mo video, one of the officers, they see the gun, they take it out of his holster, remove it from the scene, and then immediately after you hear 9 or 10 shots. We don't know how many. From another officer. Later, Donald Trump immediately posted. He posted, and this is literally the biggest voice in the world. The most important human being, the one who carries the most weight. He immediately posted the victim's gun was loaded. What is that about? If it's a crime, I guess now, according to the Republicans, that somebody is carrying a loaded gun? Wow. Isn't that interesting? You know, for Donald Trump, and let's go back in the time capsule a couple years, let's talk about Kyle Rittenhouse, where there were protests over the George Floyd thing. And I believe that's what it was. It could have been another BLM protest, but basically it all the originated from the George Floyd murder. And Kyle Rittenhouse, his mom dropped him off. He went back to his house, got his rifle, or he got his AR, one of the two, whatever it was. And then he went back and shot, I believe, 3 people, killing 2. Because he felt scared. Well, the question we all wondered was, if you felt so scared, why'd you come back? Why'd you feel the need to come back? I got to be honest with you. If I'm in a situation in a city and I feel scared, I don't run to my hotel room, get my switchblade, and then head back there. See if I can man up. Well, after he was acquitted in a court of law, even though I don't agree with the verdict, I do respect the rule of judgment, and it was a fair trial. Donald Trump said, that's good. That's a very good ruling. He had him at Mar-a-Lago. He celebrated his acquittal. Contrast that to what Donald Trump's saying here. And he is saying, and then he posted a picture of the gun on a seat. And we're really going to get deep into this here. But Donald Trump saying, and he was talking about also 2 magazines that he had on him with the gun that was concealed legally. And I just have a question for you. If Barack Obama would have said those exact same effing words, wow, he had a gun on him. What's that about? The NRA would be running ads 24/7 on every network, every cable show right now, talking about how their freedom was going to be taken away from them by the evil socialist, by the evil black man. They got to interject that. Though it doesn't have anything to do with it. This just in, if our presidents are like Barack Obama, you can go ahead and start lining up all the black men and women who need to be president. And everybody out there, we're going to, you know what, let's get to it right now. I heard so much in the 2024 campaign, well, I don't really like Trump. But, come on, it's just too far. F you. Little fun fact. After World War II ended and the Allies were in Germany, they couldn't find any Nazis. They couldn't. After the war, you want to know why? Because everybody who was a Nazi said they weren't a Nazi. And that is the same effing thing that is going on here. All these MAGA, and believe me, I had plenty of MAGA people. And they're like, well, I supported him, but I'm not for this. And, besides, he was better than Kamala. Really? Really? You could say that with a straight face. Your friends, family, people like that who sit here and somehow can say, oh, I'm not down with what he's doing with ICE now, which is his only popular issue, but he's better than Kamala. Exactly what was Kamala's crime? Oh, of course, black woman. Black woman. We got a little misogyny. We got a little racism going on there. Hell, she barely won 50% of the black male vote. I remember Magic Johnson going out through Michigan and Pennsylvania going, hey, I understand she's a lady, but we can vote for her. She's qualified. Renee Good's dad voted for Trump. And I'll tell you something, I'd really like to get a shot at that guy. Just one question. Do you realize if Donald Trump was not the president today, your daughter would be alive? How do you feel about voting for Trump? Boom. Let's see how many ways, like all the MAGA, they can try and circle out of it. Deflect, inflect, genuflect. Genuflect between your fascist orange clown. And look what we have wrought. Ashley Babbitt, one of the January 6th rioters, the people who were trying to overthrow democracy, she was killed because she tried to enter the Senate chamber. She was literally trying to assault, harm Capitol Police. And MAGA has always pinned that on the liberals. Oh, the liberals killed one of ours. Well, now you got two. You got two liberals you've killed in Minnesota. And honestly, I don't know Alex Pretti. We're going to discover more as the days. I'm not sure he was a liberal. I know Minnesota's a blue state. I know Renee Nicole Good lined up as a Democrat. I'm not going to say even a liberal. I don't know enough about her. I still haven't seen it. But everything in this gentleman's profile, he worked at the VA. And I'm not saying that makes you a Republican, okay? But there's things, right? He also had a gun. He shot the gun. He was an outdoorsman. Things that typically lead to being a Republican. Whatever he was, it didn't matter. It did not give the government, the federal government, and ICE a license to slaughter him, to execute him on the city street. Also, after Donald Trump couldn't get his fat little fingers on True Social quick enough, DHS issued their first statement 7 minutes after the death. Now, this is when there was the first angle where we're on the other side of the street and all we can see is the backs of ICE officials. We could not see Alex incapacitated. We could not see the woman. We could not see the pepper spray. And most importantly, we could not see them taking away the gun. Their statement was individual approached ICE officials with a gun. Then they very cleverly included a picture of the gun on a car seat. We're going to get to that at the end of this little segment. Then it says the officers attempted to disarm the suspect, but the armed suspect violently resisted. Right. Are these people so effing stupid? They don't realize everybody is carrying a cell phone. Hell, even the ICE guys are using the cell phone. No, they realize that. But what they're trying to do is create a narrative. They're trying to create the same caveat for our friends, family, and people like that who voted for effing Trump. Oh, well, he's not that good, but he wasn't Kamala because she's a socialist, whatever the F that means. Hey, tell me how bad socialism is when you need unemployment, you need workers' comp, you need disability, or most importantly, Social Security or Medicare or Medicaid. Socialism's good then, I guess, right? It's good all the time because it's taking care of people. It's not prioritizing businesses and profit over the human experience. But let's move off that. I've lamented enough about that. But what they are doing is giving people an excuse, their little, it's complicated. It's like a Facebook status on a relationship. Oh, it's complicated. What the F does that mean? You're either in a relationship or you're not. Christ's sake, I don't know. Right? Well, with that said, that is why they are doing this. So they can give their 40% of the bootlicking faithful a caveat out. Some little snippet where they can justify the murder and execution of a second Minnesota in less than 3 effing weeks. It's disgusting and it's despicable, and I literally cannot believe people are that effing stupid. But yes, it is the second time we've elected this orange clown. So yeah, anything's on the table, John. Anything's on the table. Stephen Miller, the little Nazi in waiting, the guy who is literally the deputy president, the guy who is pulling all these immigration, homophobic, race baiting little ideas that come out of the White House, said, plain and simple, multiple times on X post, a domestic terrorist tried to assassinate law enforcement. Will he walk that back? Of course he won't. Because he doesn't have to, because there are no repercussions. They're just going to try and move on. Oh yeah, they are moving on. It's called Maine. Good luck, Boston. Good luck, Rhode Island. Hearts going out to you. Then we get the other clown, Greg Bovino. If you happen to see that short we had last week of him doing the tear gas to a dispersing crowd of about 8 people, because Greg didn't make the football team when he was a kid. So he's got to prove he's a real man now. Like Pinocchio. I'm a real boy. Yeah, you're a real man too, Greg. So you go ahead and say, I'm throwing tear gas, and you throw the tear gas in, and then you charge the little camera. Ooh, me big man. I got a green poncho. Nine minutes after the slaying, he went on. Individual approached agents with semi-automatic weapon. First of all, they did not know he had a semi-automatic weapon. For a party that believes in concealed carry, it is kind of an amazing thing that this is the grievance. This is the reason they're justifying his murder and execution. Said agents tried to disarm the individual. He violently resisted. We saw what happened. The agents pushed the woman down. He came to her aid. They gang tackled him, pushed him down, pepper sprayed him, took his gun, and then shot him 9 times. And what is going to happen when we get that woman's account? I haven't heard hide or hair of her. Alex is getting all the headlines. He seemed like a beautiful person. Doesn't matter if he was Republican or Democrat. He was someone who tried to do the right thing. And let's not believe this, well, because he was there directing traffic, he was there in the protest, he had to be a liberal. No. That's the same bullshit we heard with the Charlie Kirk murder or with the Michigan church thing. Oh, it's got to be a liberal. The church synagogue bombing in Mississippi. Oh, it's got to be liberal. Oh no. Oh, all rock red MAGA. Check, check, check. Yeah. Then Greg keeps going down, says Border Patrol agent fired a defensive shot. Literally, a defensive shot. A defensive shot. That literally was a firing squad. The firing squad, shot at the guy in the yard because they were afraid he was going to throw a rock at him. Yep. There you go. There you go. Isn't it amazing for the party that has the snake, don't tread on me, live free or die? Boy, they sure tell you to start licking some boots and kissing some ass, don't they? They sure do. They can't tell you quick enough. For this big macho alpha party, we're all alpha men, alpha women, blah, blah, blah. But boy, when one of their cops executes somebody, they're like, hey, you should obey. You should obey. Shouldn't even look the other way. Immediately put your eyes to the ground. Put out your hand. Yes, sir. No, sir. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Yeah. We saw exactly how they feel at January 6th, when they were actually given lawful orders that they disobeyed, and then they assaulted over 150 cops who needed medical attention and killed one of them. Then Greg Bovino at the end showed the picture of the gun on a seat, and he said that this individual who had a gun, had 2 clips, did not have, and I don't even understand what this means, did not have an accessible ID. I don't know what that means, if it was in a pocket that maybe had a zipper or Velcro. I was kind of taken back by that. Why did he say it was inaccessible? What does that mean? If they got it off his body, his dead body, it's obviously accessible. He said he wanted to do maximum damage and massacre law enforcement. Look, we know what we know. We know they executed this innocent individual who was just taking part in democracy. That's all it was. They keep spreading the lies. Also, and this is something you're not going to hear probably on any other podcast, is they immediately tried to commandeer the scene. The police chief for Minneapolis, I believe it was, said, no, we're not standing down. We are going to take control of the scene. And then they left. Now, here's the issue. We saw the picture of the gun on a front seat of a vehicle, I'm assuming a nice vehicle, whatever it was. They took his phone, supposedly. Here's the question. And the same thing is going to happen in the Renee Good when the trial does come around. One of the problems the prosecutors are going to have is the scene was contaminated. The defense is going to have a very viable line of, we can't trust the evidence. The scene was not contained. It was not quarantined. It was not locked down. One of the first things that police do, or the military typically, when there is a shooting, when there is a grievance, a very significant incident that happens, they literally take care of the scene so that all of the evidence can be dealt with by forensic experts, pathologists. It's like NCIS. You seen an episode of that? Sadly, I've seen way too many. But what I'm saying is, when they find dead bodies, they find cocaine, whatever, they literally lock it down immediately, and then they have the experts accumulate the evidence in a methodical and scientific way. Well, I can tell you right now, and I'm not a defense attorney, but these 2 crime scenes, they are contaminated. They literally are. And I do think the Trump administration is doing that on purpose so that these ICE people, you know, the ones that J.D. Vance a couple of weeks ago said have absolute immunity, this is their get out of jail free card. Forget it. Nobody else is looking at that. The scenes are contaminated. And one of the things that has marked the history of our law enforcement agencies is they get to the scene, they collect the evidence, they don't make any inflammatory or incorrect statements. Well, the Trump administration makes incorrect statements from literally the get-go. They don't know how many videos, they don't know what angle they were, they just start the lies. And then, when they get caught in the lies, they make new lies to try and cover for the old lies. Because if you're lying every day, you can't remember all the lies. You only remember the recent lies. And that's their thing. There's no transparency. There's no truth. There's no desire for any type of honesty. And like I said, what would happen if there was a liberal who did what they did today? Said, somebody with a gun approached law enforcement. You know, for a party that literally gets their rocks off because they can be men and women and they can carry a gun and that's how they prove their worth, I guess, whatever that is. It is despicable that now a man was killed, executed in the streets of Minnesota, and there will be more. There absolutely will be. Some of the things that came out afterwards, and this, I don't even really even know. We talked about how the Democrats have capitulated on this funding bill that's going to come out next week to extend the government. And one of the things that progressives have been saying is you cannot allow ICE to continue to get funded. You have to defund them in the bill. And they are so scared because their wimp ass, pussy ass little political consultants say, oh, that's not going to poll well in November. F November. We're trying to get out of January without any more people getting killed by this administration. Well, Chuck Schumer and the Democrats are now saying they will provide funding next week in the 6 individual bills that will continue the government funding. We'll see. I'm not believing that. Administration's openly killing citizens. 30 people died in ICE custody last year. And if we see how egregious, how treacherous they are when they know there's cameras on them, what is happening behind the walls in these ICE facilities where there are no cameras? What are they doing there? We talked about it last week. The coroner for El Paso said that there was actually a homicide in the ICE detention facility. One of the inmates actually detailed how he was killed. 6 ICE people came at him, choked him out. Literally, how easy would it be for them to pull a George Floyd inside walls with no cameras? Of course, there's cameras for the facility, but I'm sure they make sure they kill you in places that don't, that have little blackout zones. Kind of like the one that they killed Jeffrey Epstein on. Oh, the camera wasn't working for those 45 seconds. What a shock. What a shock. All right. I'm going to end this segment. I'm going to get to Alex Honnold. It's a statement from the family of Alex Pretti, parents, Michael and Susan Pretti. Stay with me. We are heartbroken, but also very angry. Alex was a kind-hearted soul who cared deeply for his family and friends, and also the American veterans whom he cared for as an ICU nurse at the Minneapolis VA hospital. Alex wanted to make a difference in this world. Unfortunately, he will not be with us to see his impact. I do not throw around the hero term lightly. However, his last thought and act was to protect a woman. The sickening lies told about our son by the administration are reprehensible and disgusting. Alex is clearly not holding a gun when attacked by Trump's murdering and cowardly ICE thugs. He had his phone in his right hand, and his empty left hand is raised above his head while trying to protect the women ICE just pushed down, all while being pepper sprayed. Please get the truth out about our son. He was a good man. Thank you. One thing I did not bring in, if you look at the video, he's wearing gloves. Thick gloves, not isotoners that you can scroll on your phone. He had his phone out. Yeah, he could hit the button for record, but he had some pretty thick gloves. I think I've went over everything. In 3 weeks, Renee Nicole Good and Alex Pretti are no longer with us. In a state where 75% of the people are white. ICE continues its assault, its jackthuggery, no consequences, sending a message to the rest of their ICE Nazis that it's okay to kill. We'll cover up the scene, we'll contaminate it, we'll be off. Yep. All right. Finally, and if you waited this long, thank you. Thank you very much. It's been a long slog, I'm sure, for you. Alex Honnold is truly one of the most inspirational people I have ever seen. He had an amazing documentary a couple years ago uh, Free Solo, and it was about him. He is. I'm gonna put some things out here, and I don't have any substantiation. To me, he's like the Michael Jordan of rock climbing, or how about the Larry Bird and the Magic Johnson? Okay, maybe he's not the best. He seems like he's the best, but he's the guy who really put it on the map. And I'll say Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, right? He has done some amazing things. One of his things is, or really his big thing is, he doesn't use ropes, cantilevers, rock picks, anything. He just takes his hands and he does Spider-Man. He literally is a living Spider-Man. And I remember back before his most famous climb was El Capitan in Yosemite. And it was a climb that very few had even made with climbing equipment. And I remember 60 Minutes was there, and I believe it was the great correspondent Leslie Stahl. And there was one of the best rock climbers in the world. And they were a half a mile away in the valley. And they're watching Alex go up this 4,000 foot straight vertical, right? And I remember he's about halfway up. And the other rock climber is doing some commentary for Leslie. And he says, look, this is the big point. And she goes, what do you mean it's the big point? And he says to her, if he goes, whatever, another 10 feet here, he can't turn around. He has to get all the way to the top. You either get to the top or you end up on the bottom dead. And Alex Honnold does something that it's all or nothing. It's kind of, in a very graphic way, it's kind of like bomb disposal. It's all or nothing. And Alex Honnold scaled this weekend a 101-story building in Taipei. It had been scaled before with some climbing equipment a couple years ago when it opened. But Netflix broadcast it live, and they had a 10-second delay. You know why they had a 10-second delay? Because when he falls off the building, they're not going to broadcast the actual death when he splatters like a million bugs. And I am kind of torn here because I do like to see, I'm sure Alex got a very handsome payday. But really, isn't this like the Running Man? We are sitting there waiting till death comes. We are intrigued by Alex. And let's call it what it is. He was successful. Kudos. I'm happy you're alive, Alex. I think you're a stalwart. I think you're a great guy. But the next time Netflix isn't going to put it on a 10-second delay, are they? They open the door. Let's just have them just climb everything. The Freedom Tower in New York. You know, skyscraper in you know, Qatar or Abu Dhabi or, you know, wherever. Dubai. Wherever Tom Cruise doesn't want to go. And I understand that we live in a time that's very competitive. People want to make money. They want to monetize things. But really, do we need to live in a society where we're basically just watching a man eventually going to come to his death? And I hope I'm wrong. But it just takes one mistake. There is no second chance. There is no do-over. We're watching a man for our pleasure, for our ratings, for our sadism. Basically just saying, is the bomb going to explode? It's like Jeremy Renner in The Hurt Locker. He's addicted to the rush. Even when he came back to America, he kept bugging his wife until he could get back over there because he liked the rush. And eventually one day the rush isn't going to be enough. The rush is going to catch you. That's all I got to say. I'm glad you made it, Alex. I hope you live a long and healthy life. I worry about you. And I worry what it says about us as a society where Netflix, the biggest streaming platform in the world, is literally videoing you or waiting for your death. Don't tell me we're happy he got to the top. Yeah, I am. I think everybody is. But the big reason we're watching for the whole 90 minutes is because we're wondering, is he going to slip? Is his foot going to give on that ledge? And then are we going to watch Faces of Death 5? Here's where Alex slipped. I won't be part of that. I'll tell you that right now. I'm glad he made it. I hope he makes $1 million more, and I hope he makes $100 million. But Alex, what are you doing? You don't need to be Russell Crowe on the floor of the Coliseum for us waiting for your blood to be spilled so we can have a bottle of Chianti, have a roll, and go to bed and go, wow, thought he was going to make it. All right. That's it. If you could, please, on a somber day, say a prayer up for Alex. Say a prayer for Renee. And let's pray there will be no more deaths. There will be no more murders. There will be no more executions by these ICE thugs. All right. Leave a comment, and we'll see you soon on the Scorched Earth Political Podcast.